Hello to the thousands watching in the United States and around the world. I'm Lee Camp. This is Dangerous Ideas. 300,000 people, estimates are saying, stormed D.C. this past weekend, Saturday, November 4th. I was there. It was amazing to see, obviously, for horrible reasons, but hundreds of thousands of people were there. It was all there to demand an end to this genocide, to demand an end to these crimes against humanity, to demand an end to what Israel is doing against Palestinians right now, bombing the ever-living hell out of an open-air prison that they have held for decades. And 300,000 people arrived in D.C. Many of them did not just stand at Freedom Plaza, which was where this thing was supposed to be centered, but it ultimately was so big that they could not keep it at Freedom Plaza. It was far larger than that. I never actually got anywhere near the stage because it was just too many people. It was impossible to get. I mean, for me, traveling with a kid and everything, impossible for me to get near where they had speakers and things like that. But that's good. That's a good problem to have. And I after sitting in traffic and everything, I was able to get there like over an hour after it was supposed to begin. And we passed an endless number of buses that were still headed there. So I think many people may have seen a photo of one little portion of this protest and said, that's not 300,000 people. It was a far larger than one photograph could show or could handle. It kept going and going. Let's see here. I want to bring you. Oh, I thought I had another. Well, I have an image. This is. I thought this was one very effective protest. Was they had or point to make? They had 100-long-foot piece of paper printout of the names of those who have been murdered during this genocide being perpetrated by Israel. And like, honestly, and these names are written in tiny font, and yet it goes for 100 feet, draping over people's heads. This is all that Israel has managed to kill in just 4 weeks, in just a month. Israel has killed, it's now over 10,000. The vast majority of them, women, children, innocent people, elderly. And anybody who acts like this is some sort of war or some sort of battle, or people who go, they're in a fight, and bad things happen in war. No, this isn't a fight. This is a massacre. This is a genocide. And they have had these plans for I've brought you leaked documents and actually public documents showing that they have had this plan to clear out Gaza, to try and move Palestinians south into Egypt, into tent cities for years now. And it's, Netanyahu has been saying things like this for years. There are many others in his camp or in the Israeli government that have called for the eradication of the Palestinian people. So it is. I mean, it's unbelievable, but it was also unbelievable to see. It was unbelievable to see this many people coming together over many, many hours. Like I said, many people couldn't get into town, couldn't get near it. So people arrived very late, and yet the corporate media, for the most part, barely covered it. When they did cover it, they undercounted the number that were there heavily. And, that's their job, right? Is to make you think that people aren't fighting back. Obviously, people are fighting back around the United States in a variety of ways. Some have been blocking ports. I believe there's a protest that continues right now, I think in California, to block ports where weapons get shipped over to Israel. The U.S. is not just a small piece of this. We are hand in hand with the genocide that Israel's perpetrating right now. Not only do we give them the weaponry they need, the money they need, but we also give them the propaganda cover they need. We are also, as I covered on the last live stream, there are boots on the ground there. There are U.S. special forces that claim they may help in going into the tunnels in Gaza and fighting Hamas there. There's U.S. is already helping with drones over top of drone, surveillance over top of Gaza, which means they're part of the battle. They are part of the war. But like I said, it's not a war. It's just a massacre. It's just a genocide. And, those who aren't standing against this it really is sad for them. It's sad for those who are looking the other direction that they don't have the moral core. And it's definitely sad for those who feel that they need to stand up and say, oh, no, we need to support Israel. Yeah, well, even if that were true, which it's not, because from day one, it's an apartheid state where they kicked people off their land. But even if it were true, we have to support fill in the blank. Not when they're committing a genocide. Doesn't matter who they are. Doesn't matter what they're doing. Not when they're committing a genocide. That's when you need to stop. If you have any sort of moral core, you need to cut it loose then. Yeah, someone's mentioning Bernie Sanders. I'm going to bring up Bernie later, show a clip of him. He has done a very sheepish, half-hearted video where it seems the pressure is starting to get to him to ask for some kind of ceasefire. Although I'll point out how pathetic it is. I'm also going to show video of Obama. This is in front. The photo I'm showing now is in front of the Statue of Liberty. Jewish Voice for Peace has been doing excellent work on this topic. Jewish Voice for Peace. You can find them on Twitter, JVP Live. And they say, happening now at the Statue of Liberty, hundreds of Jews and allies are holding an emergency sit-in, taking over the island to demand a ceasefire in Gaza. We refuse to allow a genocide to be carried out in our name. Ceasefire now to save lives, never again for anyone. And I think what Jewish Voice for Peace has been doing is important because people need to hear it from Jews, from Jews like myself, from even there are many rabbis, far more Jewish than I am. I'm, born and raised Jewish, but atheist by choice. But, I listen, I will still light a goddamn Hanukkah candle. All right. I'll tell you what. But there are many rabbis. There are many very religious people who say this is a horror show. The head of the UN, Guterres, has called this a nightmare. And yet you have Biden and Blinken and the entire U.S. ruling elite saying, we wish there was something we could do. We wish our hands are tied. There's a million things the U.S. could do to stop this shit show, this crime against humanity that continues day in and day out. Over 10,000 people murdered by Israel as they target innocent civilians, as they target hospitals, as they target journalists. Over 47, it's 47 now. I'm sure it's higher now, but 47 last I heard, journalists murdered because they are targeting journalists. They are calling journalists and saying, get out of your house because we're about to bomb it. Now, they don't always do that. And if they don't get them on the phone or whatever else, they just bomb it. And that's how they end up killing so many journalists. Some of them, they tell them to get out of their house. Rarely, but that proves that they know what they're doing. That proves that is not like, oh, whoopsie, we hit a journalist's house. No, that is, we are aiming for the houses, the apartment buildings of journalists. I mean, and then we can get into how much this is creating anti-Semitism. This is making anti-Semitism worse. What adds more fuel? What adds more tinder, to just absolute gasoline to anti-Semitism than to commit one of the most horrific genocides that we have been able to witness with phones and where videos at every corner. Obviously, there are far larger genocides that have been committed, but that we're now in the age where everything gets documented. Obviously, Israel is now trying to cover up a lot of what gets out of Gaza, but you've seen the footage. If you haven't, you certainly could if you wanted to, of all the children they're bombing, of all the apartments they're bombing, of the hospitals they're bombing. And even if you wanted to believe Israel's propaganda about, oh, we have to bomb the hospital because there is a Hamas something underneath it, even if that were true, which, with Israel's propaganda, almost everything they say is false. So who knows what's true? But even if that were true, that there were a Hamas, whatever the hell, underneath the hospital, you still can't bomb a hospital. You can't just bomb children, kill 1,000 people, 500 people, so that you can take out a computer that Hamas had underneath the hospital. That's insanity. Pure insanity. So that protest of 300,000 people was put on. And by the way, I'm going to bring you more in a second of the horrible things that Israeli doctors are saying, Palestinian workers trapped in Israel. I'm going to bring you Obama's comments. That's all coming up. And if you would, please click share, please click thumbs up, and all that stuff helps. Leaving a comment helps. Obviously, super chats are awesome, but I understand not everybody has the $5 to help fund this show. So thank you to all of you who are just watching it without being members. That's okay too. But please do share it and get it around, because we're fighting an information war as well to get these facts out there, because our mainstream media, this is something else I've covered extensively, is doing crazy manipulative propaganda to stop you from learning these things, to stop you from learning them or thinking about them in a certain way. I'll bring you more of that coming up. But okay, so what I was about to say is the Answer Coalition put on that rally. They did it in coordination with several others, but they were one of the main ones in DC, and they are now moving to the next step, which is shut it down. They're saying shut it down for Palestine November 9th. But it seems to me, the way this website is designed, that it's not just November 9th. It seems they want an ongoing effort to shut down companies, corporations, government entities, banks, all those things that are connected to Israel, connected to supporting Israel, connected to supporting this genocide. And I, of course, wholeheartedly support all of that. So the site is shutitdownforpalestine.org, but the word for is the number 4, shutitdownforpalestine.org. And you can go there and you can add events in your area. You can join events. You can join their email list, where I assume they'll be emailing out to let people know when various shut it down actions are happening. So that is the next step for their portion of their efforts. It says walk out from work and or school, picket Israeli embassies and consulates, picket against companies that profit from Israel's occupation of Palestine, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics, Elbit Systems, but there are many more. And I'm actually going to bring you a video, hopefully, if the editing's complete, going to bring you a video of a video about the corporations that are either fully in support of Israel's genocide or are actually helping it happen, like the weapons contractors. That video will be out later this week, I hope. They're saying wear keffiyehs, wear black armbands. But yeah, these are important steps. And as I've mentioned before, our government is so out of line with the American people on this topic. And this goes, I know some of you are in the UK and other countries, Canada. It's very similar in all those places. Breathtakingly out of line with what the American people want on this issue. It's over 65%. Over 65% of America say they want at least a ceasefire. Now, that doesn't, obviously, that's not all 65% endorse a free Palestine. Not all 65% say no more apartheid state, but at least 65% say ceasefire now. In the U.S. government, in the House, in the Senate, in the White House, it's zero say ceasefire now. There's like 5 people in the House, Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and a couple others maybe that say ceasefire now, but you've got hundreds of politicians, the entire, inner circle of the White House, the entirety of the Senate voted 97-0 to quote unquote support Israel in this genocide. Almost the entirety of the House, and this shows how little these government bodies, these people represent us, you and me. This goes to show how little they represent us. Not at all. If the American people want something, whether it be healthcare, free college, or erasing debt, or ending the genocide on Palestinians, one of those things, if the U.S. people want it, even to the level of 75% of us want it, it doesn't happen unless it aligns with corporate interests. And ending the genocide does not align with corporate interests. And so that's not a democracy. That's not a representative. It's not a republic. You've got nothing. You've got nothing. You've got what's technically defined as inverted totalitarianism, defined by political philosopher Sheldon Wolin. Someone again is asking, what has Bernie Sanders said about this? I'm going to play a Bernie Sanders clip in a moment, but Bernie voted with the 97-0, saying, yay to genocide. Keep it going. Bernie Sanders has been shit on this topic. It seems like he's getting some pressure, but let me bring you one of those videos. Since everybody's asking about it, I'll go ahead and jump down to the Bernie Sanders video. Why not? I'm a man of the people. So if you say you want the Sandman, then it has to happen. What choice do I have? No, but I'll bring you. So this is Bernie. To me, this is him like easing up. Like this is after, I assume, a lot of people have pressured him, and even former people in his campaigns like Breonna Joy Gray have called what he's done one of the most disgusting stances of a politician they thought they believed in. To see him also signing on with this genocide is just horrific. But okay, so here he is, and as you'll see, he is talking about what a horror show this is, because I think he's gotten a lot of pressure on his terrible vote. But all right, but I'll still break down how frustrating what he's saying is.
Bombing refugee camps, bombing ambulances.
Hold on. All right.
Bombing refugee camps, bombing ambulances, killing thousands of innocent men, women, and children in violation of international law is simply not acceptable.
Okay, so you hear that and you go, oh, this guy's going to demand an end to the apartheid state, demand not just a ceasefire, but an end to the war entirely, demand the U.S. stop sending arms to Israel and stop funding Israel. You say an opening line like that. I mean, this isn't the beginning of the speech, but you say something like that. Of course, he should endorse all those things. But in fact, he was on TV the other day, asked if there should be a ceasefire, and he said, quote, there cannot be a ceasefire against someone like Hamas. Now, maybe he's changed his tune a little. I don't know how many days ago that was. I know it wasn't long, maybe a couple days, but literally said there can't be a ceasefire. So you see these sentences and you go, oh, well, I guess he's going to call for an end to the apartheid state, an end to the genocide. No, he's not. And just in case I forget, someone asked where RFK stands on this. RFK Jr. is farther right than I think Netanyahu. RFK Jr. has been the worst politician I have ever seen in my life, besides maybe Lindsey Graham or some shit on Israel. He is wholly in bed and bought off by Israel. It's kind of crazy to see, like to the point of making utter false statements, saying that Palestinians are paid to murder Jews around the world. Utterly false. And it's like, wow, dude, I don't know who's paying him or what his thinking is, but wow, just wow. Anyway, back to Bernie Sanders.
It has got to stop. And, it is no great secret that the United States
Now, he doesn't seem to mean that the genocide has to stop. He just means the bombing hospitals need to stop. So basically, Israel can keep bombing Gaza and keep Gaza as an open air prison and like a plot of just concentration camp they own. They can keep that. Just stop hitting the hospitals, would you? Would you?
provides $3.8 billion every year to Israel. Now, they can say they don't want the money. Fine. But if they're going to take our money and Biden wants to give them even more, they have got to recognize that they cannot offend American values, what we stand for, what civilized world stands for.
Now, I know that must have made a bunch of you laugh right there. American values. Now, if he means the American people's values, okay, you could make that argument that the American people, if you talk about your average person, not the ruling elite, probably does stand against mass murder. Most Americans, I would imagine, very much stand for that. So if that's what he means by American values, but in terms of American government values, the American government values are obliterate everyone that's in your way for extraction, in order to get a country to do your bidding, to vote with you, to allow their resources to be extracted. Hell, if they're just socialist, if a country just wants to give their people health care, we'll try and destroy them. Those are the American values if you look at our history. So if anyone disagrees with that, then feel free to pick up one of the real history books and actually learn how this system works. Pick up a book by Oliver Stone's Untold History of the United States, or Smedley Butler's book, War is a Racket. Pick up one of those. All right, let's keep going for a minute with Bernie.
So in my view, and I'm glad that a number of people recently, because I said this like several weeks ago, understand we need a pause right now in the bombing.
He says he said that several weeks ago, but I have seen clips where he was asked about a ceasefire. This is on live news. And he says you can't have a ceasefire with someone like Hamas, which is not just saying, no, there shouldn't be a ceasefire right now. It's saying, oh, no, there should never be a ceasefire until we've murdered their entire government. That was his stance a couple weeks ago. Now, I guess if he's saying he's evolved and he heard from people with goddamn souls that that's a bad stance and he realized it was, then okay. Maybe you should say that. Maybe you should say, hey, a couple of weeks ago, I was a sociopath on this, but now I'm starting to change my tune.
We need to deal with the horrific humanitarian disaster that you described. I mean,
so the other thing he's doing here, which is really important to notice, and I've pointed out in a lot of our media, but it feels a little different coming from Bernie Sanders, is you notice he is using the passive voice. He's leaving out the subject of the sentence. He's not saying where these things created from. The bombing must stop, or he said how did he phrase it? He said the crisis. We need a pause in the bombing. Who's bombing? Don't know. He's not saying.
Pause right now in the bombing. We need
to deal with this horrific crisis. Okay, that's another way of phrasing it. To deal with this horrific crisis. Well, where'd the crisis come from? Did it fall out of the sky? Oh, it's Israel perpetrating this crisis. And I'm not denying what happened on October 7th. You can talk about how, I'm opposed to innocent civilians dying. I've brought you also coverage on how it seems very likely the IDF did most of the killing during that time. But still, even so, I'm opposed to all war. I'm opposed to kidnapping. I'm opposed to the shooting of civilians. However, he is describing this as if this crisis was not created intentionally by Israel. Israel is not just, like I said earlier, they're not just accidentally hitting these things. They're hitting hospitals. They've now been targeting the solar array of the hospital, one of the main hospitals, because they want them to have no energy. They want the incubators with the babies in them to stop functioning. They have cut off all fuel. They've cut off all water. So people are drinking dirty water, which is the number one killer of humans on this planet. They have been shooting at all power sources. So they're creating this crisis. And yet he phrases it as, we need to deal with this crisis. Well, if you're going to say a sentence like that, then talk about who's causing it. Say Israel has created this genocidal conditions. Thank you, TNT, for the donation. All right, a little more from Bernie.
To deal with the horrific humanitarian disaster that you described. I mean, the people have no water, they have no food, they have no fuel, their hospitals have been bombed. It is a total.
There it is again. Their hospitals have been bombed. By who? We don't know. Fell from the sky. Magic bombs. They just have been bombed.
Disaster. And we are on the brink of seeing thousands more people die. Hundreds.
Boy, he has pulled out every trick in the book to not say. I'm not saying he never says the word Israel. I like I said, this is just part of the clip. I'm sure he does say Israel plenty of times, but in terms of the most graphic stuff, the bombing, talking about causing the bombing, talking about causing the crisis. Here he says hundreds of thousands of people were displaced. How were they displaced? We don't know. It's just, there was a flood, I guess. Maybe. Who knows?
Hundreds of thousands of people were displaced. Where are they going? Can they return to their homes? Many of them are living in overcrowded conditions in your.
Many of them are living in overcrowded conditions. No, many of them have been forced into an open air prison. They've been forced into overcrowded conditions. They're not just living in overcrowded conditions. They showed up and they were like, this seems a little crowded. I don't know why we're doing this. But this is how our media does it as well, not just Bernie Sanders. They avoid saying the cause. And I've studied psychology. It was my minor in college. My father's a doctor, and I've studied psychology in many ways. And people think that this type of linguistics, changing the terminology, manipulating the language like this, is not that big a deal. Like, if you understand Israel's doing this, what's it matter whether Bernie says it? Like, if he says there is a crisis and you know he's talking about Israel, what's it matter? It actually has a huge impact on how negatively you view Israel or you view the IDF. It is a massive impact. Even if you know the answer, even if you know, oh, it's the IDF bombing hospitals, still that language, that linguistics trick eases the blunt to the trauma of our souls as we hear these sentences. It eases the pain. So we are less angry at Israel for committing genocide right now. And so a lot of people don't like my stuff because I don't do that shit. I'm not going to ease off the way I describe these things. If it's a genocide, I'll describe it as a genocide. If it's a open air prison, I'll call it a prison. Whereas that is not the type of rhetoric that you would use if you're running for office or some shit like that.
United Nations facilities. And by the way, the UN has lost over 60 relief workers.
Has lost. Why don't they find them? Where'd they go? Are they playing hide and go seek? How did they lose them? Oh, well, they were walking in that way, and it's just a dense forest over there, and they just can't find them. They just they lost them. The UN has lost those workers. They keep looking. They put them on the sides of milk cartons. If they could just find their workers, they didn't lose their workers. Israel murdered UN workers, dozens, 60. And even the UN in Gaza, whatever their relief organization, UN relief organization there is called, even their tweets about it refuse to say who did it. It's like, just say it's Israel. Israel bombed UN workers. That's the reality of it. And Bernie Sanders said they lost them. They're trying to find them. One of these days, if they put those you ever seen kids, like toddlers, walking around your neighborhood and they all have to hold on to like a leash? It's kind of like having a bunch of dogs on one leash. If they just did that with the UN workers, then I'm sure they could keep track of them much better.
So we are looking at a humanitarian disaster. The United States puts a lot of money into Israel, and our job is to say, yes, you have a right to defend yourself, but Palestinian children.
And that garbage line, the right to defend yourself. You notice apparently only Israel has the right to defend themselves. Hamas and Gaza, Palestinians, West Bank Palestinians, they don't have a right to defend themselves. It's a garbage term. It is meant to, just for this propaganda, to make you act like it's all right, has a right to defend itself. Yeah, well, this is not defending itself. This is bombing children and innocent people. That's not defending yourself. They defended themselves from 4-year-olds. They defended themselves from ill people in hospital beds. Well done. Don't let anyone get away with the Israel has a right to defend itself propaganda.
Children are as important as Israeli children, as important as American children. Stop the indiscriminate slaughter of innocent people.
I'm glad he said that, but yet again, who's supposed to stop it? I don't know. It was in the middle of a long speech. Who should stop it? Someone should stop it. Thank you, TNT, for another donation. This is incredibly kind of you. They say, let's call it what it is, genocide happening before our eyes. It's shameful. We stand by and watch. All right, the Bernie clip's just about over. Oh, it is over. Paid for by friends of Bernie. Anyway, that is Bernie's speech after he has received immense pressure from people calling him a sellout. And so, meaning the first couple weeks, maybe even 3 weeks of this genocide, he has sat back and said nothing and voted with the Senate to say they support Israel, quote unquote, which is basically saying we support Israel's genocidal behavior. So this is him being pushed to make this statement. Okay, I'm going to move here in a few minutes to the Obama statement, which is even worse. His garbage. But, I wanted to bring you the Guardian's bullshit and show you. Now, at least this one says who the perpetrator is at the beginning. In the title, it says Israel launches major strikes. Now, strikes is a term that's used to make you think that it's only hitting, quote unquote, targets. It's only hitting the bad guys. These are strikes. Imagine if you randomly bombed a house in your neighborhood. You didn't even have a beef with the person. You just killed a family, blew up a house. Would they call that you struck the house? You striked, dude strikes house? No. You just call it dude mass murders family. Well, that's what this is. It's not a strike. Strikes on Gaza as violence flares on the Lebanon border. Violence flares is a nice euphemism. So listen to all the ways they avoid. Now, even though they said Israel launches in the first part, look at all the ways going further that they avoid saying it's Israel murdering children. The subheading says huge explosions reported in Gaza Strip. Just reported. There was a huge. Who knows who did it? I don't know. There was an explosion somewhere. Then the opening paragraph: Gaza was rocked by a series of huge explosions on Sunday. I wonder who it was. I don't know. The suspense is killing me. On Sunday evening, and communications with the coastal strip were cut. Oh, were they cut? Who cut them? I don't know. Maybe it was Ric Flair. Who knows? As violence escalated on Israel's northern border with Lebanon. Violence just escalated. Violence does that sometimes. It just grows, and you're like, whoa, what's the violence doing? Continue. So whole first paragraph never says Israel did anything. It says the word Israel once, and it's because violence escalated on Israel's border. Second paragraph, the strikes on Gaza, again, strikes as if this is targeting very important war targeting. No, this is just indiscriminate killing. Could you imagine if Putin was behaving in the Ukraine proxy war the way Israel's behaving right now? Israel has killed more people, more innocent people in 4 weeks than Russia has killed in their entire proxy war in Ukraine. More innocent people killed in 4 weeks by Israel. Now imagine if Putin was just indiscriminately bombing hospitals intentionally. Imagine the response of the United States. Anyway, second paragraph. The strikes on Gaza came as the IDF indicated that Israeli troops were planning to enter Gaza City in force, perhaps within the next 48 hours, according to reports in Israeli media. So Israeli troops are planning to enter. And by the way, they made sure to spell out the whole Israeli Defense Force so that you hear the word defense, because, right, they're defending themselves. That's what that is. So anyway, I just wanted to bring you the opening paragraphs, which, sure, as they go on in the article, they say Israel or the IDF, did this or that. But they know, and you and I know, that most people read the first couple paragraphs. So if you can avoid telling people that Israel did these things in the first couple paragraphs, that's great propaganda there. Like I said, it has a big psychological impact for you to think, oh, it's just happened. Thank you so much for those of you who are sharing this and getting it out there. Let's see. I want to get to Max Blumenthal's numbers on exactly who has been killed in Israel versus who has been killed in Gaza. There's a big difference between the type of murders that have gone on October 7th when Hamas infiltrated Israel or broke out of the open-air prison. But this is from the Gray Zone. And Max talks about Israeli and Palestinian deaths counts from October 7th to the 30th are very revealing. Most Israelis killed on October 7th were of military age. And everyone in Israel, by the way, has to serve in the military. So if you're of military age or near it, you are part of the military or have recently been part of the military. By my last count, nearly 50% were uniformed soldiers. So 1,400, they're saying, were killed on October 7th, although Haaretz, one of the major newspapers in Israel, says it's actually, so far, they've only been able to verify 1,087, so not the 1,400 we've been hearing. But either way, even if you want to say it's 1,400, of those killed on October 7th, half were military age. Half were uniformed soldiers, so actual battle with military in soldiers. And that does not include those who were carrying weapons as private security or other reservists. And like I said, all of them served in the military, so probably a lot of them were carrying arms. However, those killed by Israel in Gaza are disproportionately under the age of 18 and over the age of 30, meaning not military age. So here are the charts. This is the number. This is the deaths in Israel on October 7th. And the vast majority of them were age 17 to 36, although almost probably 50% of them are 18 to 25. But then you look at what Israel's doing. These are the Gaza deaths. The vast majority are under the age of 30, but huge numbers of those killed have been children. I've been hearing a third, but most of the people, the majority of the people that Israel's killing are children under age 16. And then it peters off as it goes further. But this is a major difference between what Hamas's objectives were. And now you can see on this chart, I realize you can't see it if you're listening to the podcast. By the way, the podcast is called The Lee Camp Show on Spotify, also Common Censored on Spotify. But when you see the charts laid over each other, the red is the number of people Israel's killed. The blue is the number of people Hamas killed on October 7th. And obviously, Israel has killed 10 times as many already. I also brought to you a couple live streams ago the evidence, and there's a lot of it, that many of the deaths on October 7th were perpetrated by the IDF. Now, you might say that's crazy, But Israel has something called the Hannibal Directive, where if someone's taken hostage, they kill the hostage and everyone around them. They don't care if you have 20 hostages, they'll kill those 20, and they'll kill the people taking the hostages, and they'll kill the people nearby. And so they were shelling these buildings where Hamas had hostages. They were shelling them with tank rounds and burning them down. And so a lot of the death and destruction on October 7th was perpetrated by the IDF. I'm not denying that Hamas may have done horrible things. It's tough to really know the play-by-play of a lot of this, but there's a lot of evidence that IDF also did horrific things. And the IDF right now is not trying to save any of the hostages that Hamas has. They're just obliterating all of Gaza. So in bringing you this horror show and how horrific it's getting, and how completely and utterly morally bankrupt Israel is behaving right now, um, I wanted to bring you some of the aspects of it that just are even mind-boggling to me. This is so Monda Weiss, which does great work on Israel Palestine, and this article is about how Israeli doctors urged the bombing of Gaza hospitals. Let me repeat that. Doctors who sign a pledge to help other humans, there are many Israeli doctors who endorse bombing hospitals. It's tough to say that sentence and have it actually sink in, because you think you misheard it. You think it can't possibly be what you're hearing. About 90 Israeli doctors have signed a letter calling for the bombing of hospitals in Gaza. Only last week, dozens of prominent Israeli rabbis had already assured Israeli leaders that they have a right to bomb Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza, and this week's letter signed by Doctors for the Rights of IDF Soldiers. That's got to be a great organization. What do you think their bowling nights are like? That sounds wonderful. Doctors for the Rights of IDF Soldiers urges the bombing of any and every hospital in Gaza. The letter states in no uncertain terms that due to suspicion of terrorist activity, the hospitals are a legitimate target for annihilation. They claim that ambulances that are evacuating patients to the south in order to be treated elsewhere are at their disposal. So these doctors are claiming that it's okay to bomb hospitals because we told them to evacuate, when in fact, it's impossible to evacuate a hospital, not if you want to keep treating the people who are ill and dying and harmed and giving birth and everything else. The doctors claim that the residents of Gaza are the ones who brought their annihilation upon themselves. No, they didn't. The residents of Gaza are not Hamas, even if you want to say that everything Hamas has done is horrific and unjustified. Many of the residents of Gaza, the vast majority, are not Hamas. The doctors claim they brought it on themselves, echoing the genocidal rhetoric of centrist Israeli politicians who have even claimed that the children of Gaza have brought this upon themselves. That's a direct quote. The children of Gaza have brought this upon themselves. The doctors apply the term snakes, wasps, and terrorist nests in the dehumanization of the enemy, which appears to be expanded from Hamas to the whole of the Palestinian people. And those terms have been used a lot by Israel in order to justify this genocide. By you dehumanize, you act like people in Gaza are not humans, and they're wasps, they're savages, they're animals, they're dogs, and then it's okay. All horrors are justified if you act like they're not human. Now, ironically, a lot of this has a history, particularly during the Holocaust. The Jewish people, my people, were dehumanized, were called all kinds of names, including rats and dogs, in order to justify the treatment during the Holocaust. And here you have Israel, the Jewish state, doing exactly the same, taking a play out of Hitler's book in order to justify their genocidal actions. And speaking of how this is all starting to look strikingly like the Holocaust. So some Palestinians work in Israel. They're allowed. They're given a pass out of Gaza to go work um, outside of Gaza. Not many, and it's very difficult. But some of them got trapped outside of Gaza when this all went down. They didn't know it was going to happen, obviously, and it happens. And then they're stuck outside of Gaza. Now, they may have liked being stuck outside of Gaza because they didn't want to be bombed, but most of them wanted to get back to their families, whether that meant being bombed or not. I think that's how most of us would behave. If whether there's bombs raining down or not, you want to be with your family. And however, they were rounded up by Israel, and some of them were tortured. Some of them described being beaten. Some of them described being left handcuffed, sitting in the sun without any water for endless hours. But on top of that, perhaps the most striking thing is they were given numbers that were zip tied on their wrists and ankles. And maybe for those of you who are not Jewish, you don't know, or some of you might not know how powerful the imagery is of numbers on humans. But most of us grow up knowing about it because Holocaust survivors still have numbers tattooed on them. That is how they did it in Nazi Germany. They would tattoo the Holocaust, people they were sending to the concentration camps. It wasn't just Jews, obviously. It was Jews, and there was gypsies, black people. Oh wait, sorry, not gypsies. Roma, black people. Anybody they didn't like, homosexuals, anything that was outside of the norm there. Whatever Hitler didn't like was rounded up and sent to. Oh yeah, someone's mentioning communists. That's true too. But they had numbers tattooed on them. So here is Israel with the exact same behavior, not tattoos, but bracelets that you can't take off. And it's just, it really is unbelievable. It's unbelievable that they're behaving like the monsters that their relatives tried to escape. And some of them actually, but obviously many of those who survived the Holocaust are pretty old now. But they're turning into the monsters that they're trying to escape. And something I posted on Twitter, which if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's @LeeCamp, is that we heard never again a lot when I was growing up, Jewish, Sunday school, at the synagogue. You'd hear about never again. And it was not just described as never again for Jews. I always heard it and always understood it as never again, never allow a genocide to happen again against any peoples. Do not sit by and allow this to happen. That's how it was described to me. Never once was it like never again just for Jews. And yet here they are acting like that's what it means. Okay, so I want to show you these insane quotes by Barack Obama. I also want to bring you a list. In a certain sense, you could view it as a positive, but obviously that's, you're grabbing at silver linings. But a list of everything that this moment in history, that this horror show is revealing about our system. And I mean revealing in a good way, that people are becoming aware of it, even people that still think they quote unquote support Israel. But it's not just about Israel. It's revealing a lot of things about a lot of stuff. And I want to bring you that list and more. That's all coming up at rumble.com/LeeCamp. It's free to watch there. Also, if you're watching on my locals page, it will continue there. And I'm going to go a little past the hour, by the way. Rumble.com/LeeCamp. That's rumble.com/LeeCamp. Did I mention rumble.com/LeeCamp? The others are going to end because I am very censored, very suppressed. If you want to support this show and help me fight the censorship and help me be able to keep this show going, if you think it's important, if you think you got 38 cents worth, because that is what a membership divides out to, then become a member at LeeCamp.net. 38 cents an episode, $6 a month. And you get all kinds of free stuff. You get my book, Dangerous Ideas, my ebook. You also get these live streams whenever you want, because on other platforms, they disappear. and you get exclusive videos, all that stuff. So join me at rumble.com/Lee Camp and Locals. And by the way, everyone at Locals, thank you for making this show possible. Couldn't do it without you. Certainly couldn't do it without yelling out all sorts of bullshit brand names to